Hi, it's Liz from Lohas Canada. It is April the 29th, 2020. This is a podcast about knitting, about sewing, and all things crafty. So the last 2 weeks have been kind of a blur of what I've been doing and kind of living more in the moment. I did start going back to the whiteboard again because I was losing track of exactly what I wanted to accomplish and do and not just drift out into space. So I live in Parksville, which is on Vancouver Island, which is the west side of Canada, and it's just getting into the shower season, so we're getting into May showers, hopefully. The last couple of years, May has been really dry, but right now we're kind of in this cold, cool weather, which is nice because picking up wool still feels really nice. So I don't have any finished objects. I keep going back to this vest and doing little pieces of it. So what I did is I folded in the front part because it was actually too wide, and I was thinking I could take in the sides, but that would look actually a little bit too funny, and it worked out better that I could take it in from the front. So I'm gonna put in some buttons, and then I was also thinking pockets, and then I think I'll be happy with that. I did rip back a whole bunch of it because the shaping wasn't right. I didn't pick up the correct stitches across, so it was cinching it in too much. So it has been a process trying to figure out what I like about it, what I don't like, how I can make it better, and because it's my first vest or first garment, I've only done something as large as a sweater before. I'm still trying to figure out what I can do and how I can manipulate the fabric, and I'm finding it's kind of like a bit like sewing, so I'm figuring I can manipulate stuff with sewing in certain things and cinching it in, and then also flipping things over and making them smaller. So it's been an interesting construct. I don't know how to do buttons on knitted garments, so that'll be something new, and also trying to figure out how to make pockets, which sounds pretty easy. So I think that'll be fun to do, and it'll be a different challenge for me for this knitted garment. So I do have two works in progress. So the first one is a sock, and this is just a My Vanilla pattern sock, pretty basic. It's self-striping the wool, so that's been really nice to play with. This is my go-to pattern that I really like, and it's really nice, it being self-striping. I've only done one, so this took me, I think just over a week. So, but I really put an effort into it. I do notice with this wool, because I wear these ones when I work, so they're more of a workman sock, and I don't mind if they get kind of rough and dirty and stuff when I work outside. So I know that they're going to shrink, so I make them a little bit. I wash them in warm water, so just to get off that extra dirt if things go into my shoe or my boot. So I do make them a little bit bigger just so that they do have that extra squishy room. So I have knitted other socks with the same wool company, and I do know that obviously wool shrinks once it gets some warm water onto it. So I just make them a little bit bigger now. It is, I don't know where my other skein is, but patrons. So I don't really know how to say this. Patrons. And it's just the sock way. It's a 4-ply. It's in the turquoise stripes. It is a pretty inexpensive wool, especially a sock wool. So those are my kind of go-to work ones, but I am going to be trying out, once I finish this other pair, I think I only have one more ball of sock yarn, and then I'm done on my sock yarn. I have some other yarn. My stash is slowly growing smaller. I didn't have a huge stash to begin with, and I was trying to keep it down that way. But I do have some other projects of other non-sock related things, so I think I'm going to be focusing on those. But my socks are really a go-to thing when I just want something mindless, but I'm finding I can find other patterns to make other garments to do some mindless knitting. So but they are still my go-to one. I do want to try, there is one with seaweed, I think, and I want to try how those hold up it's like, I think it's wool and seaweed. I'll have to look. And then there's other ones with just wool and mohair, and they don't use any nylon, so it'd be interesting to try those. But we're coming into the spring summer now, so I don't think I'll be knitting any more socks. I do want to try to finish that last ball though before I head into summer, so I don't know if I could do that within that short amount of time, but I've been trying to do that, so because I know I won't be knitting socks in the summertime. I always, without fail, stop knitting in the summer. So we'll see how it goes this year, because I do have some cotton I can knit and also some linen blends, so I might just switch over to that and figure out if that's something that I want to do, especially now with the summer coming up and spring coming up. It's starting to get nice and warm outside, so just being outside for a couple hours, just knitting away or reading. My other whip is, it's actually going to be a skirt, and I didn't do it completely right, so it looks a little wonky, but it's by Skeindadier, and it's the My Little Black Skirt, I think it's called. And anyhow, I didn't know where my stitch markers were, so they're just using safety pins. So I'm using this Eco Hemp from Cascade Yarns, and it is, what is it? So it's 80% wool and 20% hemp, and I have heard hemp, like the cellulose fibers and the protein fibers, really react different. So I will just see how it goes and how it drapes. For this though, I'm also holding a sock yarn. There's just a ball from my stash and I can't remember which one it is, but I had quite a bit of it left. I think it was when I knitted my sister these like knee-high socks, and I can't remember for the life of me what they were, but so I've been holding them together and just knitting it like that, just so that it has some black texture in it and it's just not solid blue and white. So I wanted it, we'll see how it goes. I'm hoping it fits my waist and that it continues to have that little bit of stretch. But I mean, it's a skirt, so it's gonna be like a long time. And I only have 2 skeins, so I'm not too sure how short that will be, but I'm thinking it's gonna be like pretty short, and so I might have to add something else to it. So I think that'll be more of my mindless knitting, and then I'll also have to figure out how to do the vest. So things are 2 of my projects, and I don't like to have multiple whips because I just have too many things going on and I keep on adding more and more projects. Alright, let's talk about sewing. So I haven't been doing a lot of sewing garments this last 2 weeks. So I got something really exciting. I got an embroidery machine. So I've been looking for an embroidery machine for, I don't know, I guess when I started my eco-friendly business in September. So I was starting to research embroidery machines, figuring it out, figuring what I liked and what I didn't like, and then also the price point, right? So in my head with the eco-friendly business, I was thinking, oh, wouldn't it be great to get like a bread bag? And it actually says bread bag on it, embroidered. And when I started researching into them, they're just so expensive. So as if starting a business, I didn't want to put that much money into just a single machine just to have some little, you know, bread bag cute thing on it. So I just started building my business with just the products that I had with my home sewing machine, and I bought a $75 serger, a used serger. So now I've been looking at it more and more. So right now I've just been building up my inventory, and with that, with the embroidery machine ties into that as well. So that if we do get back into markets, then I'll have inventory in stock already ready to go. And it is a bit of a learning curve with the embroidery machines, of course. So when I was searching around, I found the one that I thought I would like the best, and then decided to call them, and they actually had a used one. So I was very, very fortunate, and with this time we're living in, they aren't able to show me how to do any of the training or, you know, just how everything goes. So it was basically just like, you know, go up to their place and they just put it in my car and I drove off. So everything works beautifully. I tested it out this morning, so I haven't been playing with it as much as I should, but this week is going to be set for learning more about the embroidery. So I also need to take into account like how much thread the machine uses, because when I did an embroidery thing, I was looking at, oh, this is quite a bit of thread that's going through. I've done hand embroidery, but I've done it on little scraps of thread that were already in this like kit that I got from the thrift store, so I wasn't really paying attention to how much thread was being used, but it does use quite a bit of thread, of course, so I just taking that into account. So for sewing, I've also been watching lots of videos on Foundation to Reveal website. They have lots of replays of calls of their mentors doing different workshops on there. So I've been doing some knitting or some sewing and listening to that in the background. So the replay I was listening to the other day was talking about Patterns of Fashion 5. I don't have it. I haven't read it yet, but it was their launch. He was talking about the book and the thought behind it and all the previous books that went before it. So that was pretty interesting, and what caught my attention was that it was talking about how in, you know, previous years women didn't go to school, they didn't have training or education, so a lot of the times the men were the tailors. We're figuring out the math, figuring out patterns, figuring out all those different things, and women, they did sew, but it was for smaller things that didn't really require math, more embroidery, more needlework. So that was pretty, I didn't really think about that. So Luca was saying in that when they were teaching women how to make a garment back then, that they had to do it without math because they weren't taught math. So they were figuring out all these different ways. So he included that in the book of how they were figuring out how to create patterns without doing a whole bunch of math, which really intrigued me. I have done the drafting for one of the patterns that is in the course, so that was quite a bit of math. It wasn't super hard math, but it was in small steps, and it wasn't that it was super hard math, but for me, I had this narrative growing up that I wasn't great at math, and I have overcome that, but it is still like the first thought that's in my head, and then I'm like, oh wait, I can do this. It's just step by step. So breaking it down, but I think because it's also like the first thought that's in your head is sometimes a little bit like, it's math, you know, it's complicated drafting math. So I understood that and I got the first draft out of the way, but I think it'd be really interesting because I have no formal or haven't even researched how to draft patterns or anything like that to learn this other method and kind of compare it later on to figure out how I can draft patterns using this other method. So that's something I'm going to continue to research. So I have also picked up some muslin, so I'm going to start working on some of those drafts in the next couple weeks. I think May is going to be figuring out how to do a corset, tweaking it, figuring it out, and doing several mock-ups and drafts of those corsets. So I did purchase some other patterns a couple of weeks ago, but then I realized, I don't know why, the one pattern I can do and I just haven't done it. I just don't know why I don't have that motivation. And then the other two patterns that I bought are actually for 4-way stretch fabric, and I don't own any 4-way stretch fabric. I have cotton, like 100% cotton and linen, and now I have some silk. So those are my main fabric choices, and so I bought some 4-way stretch fabric the other day. So I have bought some other patterns from the thrift store before the lockdown, so I'm going to be using those patterns this week, and then when that other fabric arrives, I'll figure it out. So my sister was saying that she wanted an apron and more of the Japanese traditional style apron, so very one piece, and then it has the crisscross at the back and some 2 big pockets. So she wants it in an olive green linen, which I have. So I was looking at their patterns. It looks pretty basic. To me, it looks a little bit boring, but that's kind of what's trending right now, is those crossover Japanese ones, the crossed overs at the back. And I like them, but I was looking at my patterns the other day and it would be pretty easy. I just have a regular apron pattern, so it would be pretty easy just to add the crisscross at the back and, you know, just to get the size of the apron. I also have another, like an apron you could just draw a pattern from. So I was looking at those and I was kind of not really feeling inspired. So I was looking through my patterns and I was looking at this prairie dress pattern that I got, and it's by Folkwear. And I got this from the thrift store, and it is pattern 201, and it does have this prairie dress, which is just basically like a night dress, basically. And I don't know really why I bought it at the time, because it's not something I'm really drawn to, but I'm glad I did, because they have an apron at the back. So this apron, I mean, they have it in the drawing, I guess, at the back here, this lady, but it's not really the focal point. So I was having a look at this apron, and I was thinking, oh, that would be kind of cool to do with the ruffles at the bottom, and then figuring out how they did their pockets, because it's more of like an in pocket rather than one of those just square outer pockets, like a patch pocket. So I was thinking that might be kind of neat just to have that style of apron at the bottom, and I could still do the top with a crisscross at the back and have a look at that. So I think that's what I'm going to be working on. I'm going to do it in a muslin is what my first thought was. So the apron does actually require a lot of fabric. So if it's 36 inches, it still requires, I'm 5'6" and my sister's the same height as me. So it requires 3.5 yards of fabric, or if it's 48 inches, then it's 2.5 yards. So that's quite a bit of fabric for just an apron, and then that's not even doing the top. But I really want to try this in the muslin first, seeing how it fits, how it works, and then I think I'll do it in, if she likes it. I don't even know if she's gonna like the style. She might want something really plain. So that was my thought, and then I was thinking what I could do is get some indigo and then try to dye it in indigo after I figure out how to make it correctly. So I thought that would be kind of fun to do. I keep coming back to this pattern because I like the style to an extent. There is some features I don't like about it, as it looks so I guess historical, which it is. So this is the Butterick 4049, and it's got a bunch of lace and stuff. I don't own any lace, so I bought it, you know, the pattern for like 25 cents because it was at the thrift store. But I was thinking, I think I'm actually probably wanting to take elements from this and not use the exact same setup, which would change and shift a lot of the different things. So I don't know, maybe I like the sleeves, but not necessarily the crisscrosses of the lace. I think there's just a lot of different elements, so those ones I keep coming back to and keep pulling it out of my pile of patterns, but I think I need to brew on this a little bit more and then figure out what I like about it and why I keep being drawn to it. Because do I really want to add the lace, or can I add something else to it that's kind of like lace, or I don't know. I'm just starting to create those creative juices going. So the other two patterns I pulled out, but I keep going back to them, and I've just decided this is the wrong season, like this is the wrong time to do this, but I have been searching for a while now for wool, 100% wool with different patterns. So I found a couple different places in Canada. There's way more places in the States you can get wool for pretty cheap, but in Canada it's a lot harder. Like 100% wool, you can get poly wool, no problem, but 100% wool is definitely harder. So I was thinking I'm just going to push these off, but I did want to give them an honorable mention, the Simplicity 6547, and I think that would be amazing in a wool, like a wool jacket without the shoulder pads. and who knows, when I come back around this time I might have a different pattern that's a lot better. These ones obviously I just found at the thrift store, so I just picked them up and I can obviously modify them. But I do have this one jacket, and I think it's poly on the outside, and it's nice and breezy though, so I think it might have a bit of linen fibers in it, and it looks really nice and structured, and it looks kind of businessy, but it's actually the softest material ever, and it's just a nice casual throw on, and it looks classy where it doesn't look like I've just, you know, put on my sweatshirt type thing, but it still feels like that. So I want to try to recreate something like that. So that's kind of the pattern of my other jacket, my other shirt. And then this one is Simplicity 5204, and I love these skirts, like these wool skirts. So I think I've been trying to find the wool, and if I can find it in Canada, because duty is just crazy. If I can find the wool and the pattern of wool that I like in Canada, then I'll snatch it up, and then in the fall I'll start to make those. So that, I think, is all the knitting that I have. I have made another batch of masks this week, and so those are already shipped out. I think with more and more places requiring masks now, people are continuing to sew them. I noticed in a bunch of the different groups that they're still sewing quite a bit of them. They have been slowing down a little bit just because they're having like a sewing mass spring break just to make something else, just because they've been on a roll. So some of the areas are being more proactive than others. Some of them aren't allowing them to come onto the smaller islands. Some of them are saying we need to mask everybody. So let's sew a whole bunch of masks now. We've sewn all the, the scrubs and all the headbands for our area. We now need to switch to masks and just cover this whole area with masks. So those are some of the different things happening in the area. Where I am, they aren't as proactive on that. So I'm still sewing quite a bit of masks around here, but still sending them off to different places just that are requesting it. But I think probably we're all going to need to be wearing masks at some point, and so just keep sewing. But I am starting to run out of the fabric that I've been using for masks. I don't usually have a ton of cotton on me. I did have to buy a bunch of cotton to make the masks, so I just don't know if I'll do another shopping trip for cotton, but we'll just see kind of where it is, and I would like to use up all that rest of the fabric. I just forgot there was one more sewing project, actually 2 little sewing projects, and what I did is, because I had so many scraps, I made a pillow out of them. So I still have a little hole at the top here, and all these little side scraps, just putting them in the hole, and then I can top stitch that hole once it is filled. But I've just been using the fabric that I've been making for the masks, and it'll just be a nice reminder for that time. But it's been really helping clean up the area, just because there is so much little scraps and little debris, that it just will be a nice little comfy pillow at the end of it, and I don't have to think about those anymore. So I have tried this project before, and it hasn't worked out too well for me, but if you watch Evelyn Wood's YouTube channel, she does have this project. I guess wasn't doing it right, and I'll try again on a different. I bought a couple of these bangles at the thrift store, because I think it was even like last year. And I was like, oh, she's got this nice bangle, and you put it on. She's got a nice black velvet one, and she does it a lot more puffier. And I've tried to do it, and you put your pins on here. Some people put the actual pin cushion onto a bangle, but I just, bought a cheap bangle at the thrift store, and then I just sewed it into a rectangle tube, and then it should probably be a lot thicker, but I found when I was trying to do it more thicker, it just moved a lot more. So I'll have to maybe rewatch a tutorial. I have a couple other bangles that I could possibly do it with, but I just thought, oh, this will be a nice small one, so when I start doing more things that I need more pins on, it could just be a little fashionable accessory type thing, because I don't want to pick up that habit of putting pins in your mouth, like especially now where we are and you're trying to pin something to something else. You definitely don't want to be spreading those germs around and having to wash everything 2 or 3 times. So just trying not to pick up that habit and just having a little wristlet. But I do really like hers. She has it in like a black velvet, since it looks really, really sleek, and I'm not too sure how she pushes it all in. So I did use some wool for the inside of this. The first one I used that kapor, I think it's called. It's a cellulose family from a tree, so it's really, really soft. It's very, very fluffy and luscious, but it is very like airy. So I had a harder time stuffing that in. With the wool, it was a lot more dense. I could shove it all in, where the other one, you know, it just kind of like floats away. My only other thing, my very last thing for sure, and it's not even sewn, but I felted. So this is a felted piece of wool, and 2 weeks ago when I did the last podcast, I showed you the menstrual pads that I made. So within those pads, I was trying to figure out the absorption rate depending on the different types of material that were in them. So I think I had 3 or 4 different types of pads with different types of material on them and the thicknesses. So I put it on Instagram, and someone recommended doing some wool was really great for the absorption rate. So I'm going to make a couple more of these and then do a different batch of pads and different thicknesses. The ones I made, the first batch I realized was just for regular flow, and then so I want to add some more padding, see how the thicknesses work, just depending if you add, you know, 7 layers, is that actually going to be comfortable? It might help absorb things, but actually being comfortable, I don't know. Especially this, I can probably squish it down, but it is still pretty thick, so I don't know if I need to keep on felting it so that it gets a lot thinner, or if that's going to make a difference. So it's just going to be a lots of experimentation to do another batch, and I gave them to my sisters. I have 3 sisters and then myself. So I'll do another batch again this time, and then probably in a couple months from now, once I get more feedback on them, which ones they're using, which ones they like, which ones they don't like, then I'll do another batch and then try to figure it out, kind of refine everything, kind of keep going down. So that'll be interesting to see which materials work best for the pads and the thicknesses and what people actually use, so then I can, with those refined products, then be like, okay, here's another test batch more to a larger audience of the public and different age groups, just because my sisters and I are all in our 20s and 30s, so somebody maybe being a teen might have a different experience than somebody being older needing it for different reasons. So those are all my items, all my crafting items that I've been doing this week. I have also been doing some macrame, and I've been doing some macrame bags, but I've been doing it so that I can do some tutorials online. So my hope is that I can do it in such a way that I can sell some kits from macrame kits, with everyone being at home, that they can learn how to macrame their own bags and just have that tutorial. So I've been doing that in steps. It's been taking me quite a long time. Usually with the bags, I can make them within, I think I was making them within 3 hours or 2 hours, I can't remember now, but I think it was 3 hours once I've cut out everything and then did everything to the handle. But with doing it all in steps and recording and taking pictures every single steps and writing all the different instructions is taking me quite a while. So I still have a bit more to do on that macrame tutorial, and then keep on refining it down to a good tutorial that makes cohesive sense. I've never done a tutorial where it's actually step by step, like instruction that I want to print off to put into it, but then also have something online, because I am a visual learner, so I don't know how I'm going to equate that to the written instruction, if it'll just be written instructions with little diagrams or something like that. So I'm going to have to look at different aspects to different things. So that is all the crafty things that I have been doing. So I hope you guys are all doing well and are adapting to your changes in your life. It's been an interesting change, definitely for me as well, and having to figure out my routine, what I'm doing, and just kind of figuring out this restraints also in your mind, but also physical restraints. So figuring out how privileged and how lucky we are to be living where we're living, and that we're safe, and that we are able to adapt to these situations, and it's not going to be the life that we once had before, but I think it's adapting to the life that it can be. And you know, with all this is the evolution of everything, right? So we had the like technology evolution, and now we're kind of getting more into the quality evolution. I've done some mending, and just realizing how slow I am at mending, and the slow fashion movement that's been going on, and how long it actually does take, just because I can't just run to the thrift store and get something different, using up the things that I already have, and just really appreciating what I do have, and things aren't as instant as before. So just trying to adjust to that. I hope you guys are all staying safe and staying well and staying indoors and filling up your time with crafty things. I will chat with you later. Okay, bye!